Supporting survivors or victims. How can we help? This is section 4E of the Creative Interventions Toolkit, a practical guide to stop interpersonal violence. The sections in this section are: what is supporting survivors or victims? Supporting survivors or victims across the 4 phases. Tips, special considerations, facilitator notes, real-life stories and examples, supporting survivor or victim tools. What I'm going to do, because there's so much information, is I'm going to read the key points that stick out to me, probably mostly what's in bold, and the key questions. And then I will go back and read the details for each section, which may end up being a separate recording. So, to start, supporting survivors. I'm a survivor, so this part is what I consider to be the most important part of how anyone can contribute to ending bullying by supporting survivors. Key questions. What violence or abuse did the survivor or victim experience? What harms have resulted? What do they think will be helpful to them? Who can best offer this support? How are they getting ongoing support? What is it? Survivor or victim support focus on providing for the health, safety, and other needs and wants of someone who has been or is the survivor or victim of harm. Why is it important? Supporting survivors can be the first step in addressing the harms that interpersonal violence brings. This includes physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, and financial harms. Some survivors or victims make the claim that it is the emotional harm that can hurt even more than the physical. Direct emotional harm can be brought about through constant fear, humiliation, put-downs, and attempts to make someone doubt their own judgment and self-worth. This can be made even worse by isolation, shame, self-blame, and blame by others that often accompany victimization by interpersonal violence. Since interpersonal violence often involves people we know or even care deeply about, this can be confused by mixed feelings of love for the person doing harm or fear that coming forward to find help may also cause unwanted consequences to the person doing harm. We may fear that we risk losing someone close to us, that we will hurt the parent of our child, that they might end up in jail, that immigration authorities may take them away, that they might lose their job, or that others will look down both on the person doing harm and on us for being victims of violence. Even though people are generally much more aware about domestic violence, sexual assault, and other forms of interpersonal violence, misunderstanding and blame of victims still runs very deep. Note, support for the survivor may not result in healing. Healing is a deeply personal process. Healing may not be a goal or a desire of the survivor or victim, person doing harm, or anybody else involved in this intervention process. Or it may be a goal that is unrelated to this intervention, but rather pursued in another way. While healing may result from any aspect of this intervention and may be chosen as a goal, creative interventions does not assume that healing will necessarily result from violence intervention. Therefore, we leave it to those using this toolkit to choose whether the term healing is useful to you. What survivor or victim support can look like. Survivor or victim support may include things such as believing the survivor, listening to the survivor's story, concerns, and needs. Putting yourself in the survivor's shoes, empathizing. Holding back before telling the survivor what to do or offering your advice. Holding back when you feel yourself becoming judgmental or impatient or having other negative feelings. Offering advice or feedback if the survivor wants it, and being humble enough to see that your advice or feedback may not be right. Being patient with repetition. Being a sounding board to help the survivor get clear about what they want and need. Being patient with and helping the survivor or victim sort through mixed feelings and confusions, such as confusion about whether one is really in danger, how they feel about the person doing harm, what they want to do about the harm, whether or not they stay with the person doing harm, if this is someone they are close to or in an intimate relationship with, or in my case, neighbors. And I just want to interject something here because I've experienced a lot of people telling me that I should leave. And that has felt so hurtful because I have left so many abusive situations and I lose out financially, emotionally, my connection to the land, and the people doing harm in many cases have stayed on the land, trashed it, and then abandoned it, whereas I wanted to grow a garden on it. So I just wanted to say that something I don't feel like we talk enough about is that often victims and survivors are told to leave to get out of the abusive situation, and yet we don't provide them places to go that are safe and that feel like home. And so I think it would be great if we did more to make the abusers leave and make it possible for the survivors to stay in their homes. Back to the book. How the survivor feels about anyone addressing or confronting the person doing harm. Whether they want other people to know about what happened. Helping think through your role in providing things like emotional support, safety, companionship, help going to necessary meetings or appointments, help thinking of who is a safe and trusted ally, help with shelter, childcare, transportation, food, money, and other needs, help contacting other allies, help educating other allies, help building a network of support. Being an ally through other aspects of a community-based intervention, such as acting as the facilitator, engaging with the person doing harm, playing other roles as listed in Section 4C, mapping allies and barriers, or Section 4F, working together. Engaging with the community to organize support, educate the community, or challenge dynamics that contribute to violence. Being an ally in active and consistent ways. Finding your own support to prevent burnout and resentment. This can be done with other allies as you form a team. Keeping this story only among safe people. Stopping yourself from telling their story in a gossipy way. Helping them use this toolkit and other useful resources. Making your way through this toolkit and other useful resources. The tools in this section. The Supporting Survivors or Victims section highlights the importance of supporting survivors or victims and offers tools to think through what types of support might best meet their needs. Every person and every situation is unique. Tool E1, what does the survivor or victim need? checklist offers a list of possible types of support a survivor or victim might want or need. It is good for allies to see this list, especially since it might include things that a survivor or victim is unable to express or afraid to ask for. Survivors or victims can use tool E2. What does the survivor or victim need? Guiding questions to think more carefully about the kind of support that might be helpful to them, what they could ask for, and what allies or resources might be able to offer this support. Finally, survivors or victims may be involved in interventions at very different levels, from taking an active lead role to no involvement. This toolkit works best with at least some level of involvement in the intervention by the survivor or victim. In fact, receiving support from allies willing to work together towards addressing, reducing, ending, or preventing violence can be a powerful form of support. Tool E3, Survivor or Victim Participation in an Intervention Chart, helps a survivor or victim and the intervention team to better understand possible types and levels of survivor or victim participation. It also offers tips about how support can still be offered even if the survivor or victim is not at all involved in the intervention, or even if they just disagree with an intervention. Well, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but the Koki frogs are coming out, so I'm going to just go through the bold parts quickly. E2, supporting survivors or victims across the 4 phases. Phase 1, getting started. Phase 2, planning and preparation. Phase 3, taking action. Phase 4, following up. Related tools. Tools to identify the dynamics of harm experienced by the survivor are in Section 4A, Getting Clear. Section 4C, Mapping Allies and Barriers, can be used to find the right people to help offer survivor or victim support. E3, Supporting Survivors or Victims Tips. Number 1, read some basics everyone should know. Interpersonal violence is complicated. Although we may hear more about domestic violence or sexual assault these days, many misunderstandings still exist and many misconceptions about what it is and how to approach it. Number 2, understand the many barriers to survivors or victims asking for support. Survivors or victims may not always be straightforward in stating their feelings or their needs. Fear of judgment from others, fear of retaliation from the person doing harm if they find out, self-blame and shame about being a victim. These and many other factors can make it difficult to talk about violence and to ask for support. Many survivors or victims may have reached out to others for help and received a negative response or no response at all. They may be reluctant to try again, or may fear that they will again get a reaction that might make them feel even more helpless and alone. It may be easy to blame survivors or victims for not asking for what they need, for changing their minds, or for asking for too much. It is easy to think that it is the survivor or victim's fault. We have many ways of and words for blaming the victim. Supporting survivors or victims asks us to be patient, forgiving, and non-judgmental. It asks us to have some understanding of the many barriers they face in seeking help. Number 3, do not promise more than you can give. Try to give what you promised. Number 4, the type of community-based intervention introduced in this toolkit works best when the survivor or victim is involved. Number 5, help to keep up survivor or victim support throughout an intervention. It is easy to forget survivor or victim support once an active intervention moves forward. especially if people focus on the person doing harm. Make survivor or victim support a central part of the intervention plan. Number 6, offer honest support to a survivor or victim. You may not always agree with the values, opinions, or goals of the survivor or victim. This toolkit offers a variety of tools for people to discuss and reach consensus on the values guiding the intervention and the goals of the intervention. Number 7, offering support can be very difficult. Make sure you have your own support. Number 8, support for survivors or victims can be complicated if you have a relationship to the person doing harm. E4, supporting survivors or victims' special considerations. And there are no bold parts here. 3 pages. So, which goes from survivor or victim to community ally to person doing harm to facilitator. Number 1, encourage and support people to learn fundamental information first if they have not already. This toolkit is long and can be overwhelming. Some important parts of this toolkit are Section 2, some basics everyone should know. An especially important section can be Section 2.2, interpersonal violence, some basics everyone should know, that discusses much more about the dynamics of violence and common misunderstandings that people have. Number 2, make sure to return to the survivor or victim as an anchor to the intervention process. Number 3, make sure that survivor or victim safety is addressed. The survivor may be in an especially vulnerable position with regard to safety. Actions taken by the intervention team may lead in anticipated and unanticipated ways to retaliation against the survivor or victim, as they have been a central target of violence by the person doing harm. All risks must be examined and explored before moving forward. Safety plans need to be established so that the survivor or victim, as well as allies or others involved in the intervention, are not further harmed as a result of the intervention. And there's supporting survivors or victims, real-life stories and examples. Getting support from my coworkers. And then it goes to the what does the survivor or victim need checklist. What does the survivor or victim need guiding questions. And survivor or victim participation in an intervention chart. I'm just going to go over this checklist real quick, and then I think I might stop. Supporting survivors or victims, Tool E1. What does the survivor or victim need? Checklist. Possible ways you can support a survivor or victim of interpersonal violence. Make a human connection. Let them know you care. Listen to their story. Ask them what they need. Help them get what they need. Let them know that interpersonal violence happens to many people. Praise them for anything and everything they do to address their situation of harm, including talking to you. Let them know that they are not alone. Things you can offer: a listening ear, patience through what may be their inability to make a decision, confusion, changing minds, repetition. Someone to lean on or hand to hold through fear, shame, confusion, depression, embarrassment. Sounding board, to listen and offer feedback, not necessarily to give advice. Safety, see Section 4B, staying safe. Medical care, mental health care or counseling. Religious or spiritual support. Companionship, help supporting children or other dependents. childcare, child pickup, activities with children, emotional support for children who may be going through a hard time through violence or intervention. Help taking care of pets or other beings or things that the survivor or victim usually cares for. Help educating and informing others to be good allies, trusted friends, family members, neighbors, co-workers, community members. Help protecting from people who may bring risk or harm, including those who mean to be helpful but who are not. Help support the person doing harm to take accountability if you are in a position to do so. See Section 4E, Taking Accountability. Help finding and connecting them to resources. Help with housing or safe shelter if needed. Help moving, storing things, packing, unpacking. Help with accompaniment, rides, transportation, access to telephone or internet. Help with other necessary things, like clothes, food, money, bus card. Help figuring out how they want to talk about their situation, what they specifically need, and what they want to prioritize. Help with translation, interpretation for non-English or limited English speakers, or hearing or visually impaired, and explaining the factors such as culture or immigration status to service providers. Help figuring out a way around systems such as police, criminal justice, immigration, or child welfare if these systems might present risk or harm, for example, if they are an undocumented immigrant. Help them use the toolkit. Become familiar with this toolkit. Introduce them to the toolkit in a way that is useful and not overwhelming. May include reading pieces, photocopying pages, translating useful information. Introduce other allies to the toolkit in a way that is useful. Play a role as an ally as presented in this toolkit. See Section 4C, Mapping Allies and Barriers. What does the survivor or victim need? Guiding questions. If you are a survivor or victim of violence and think you might want the support from others that you trust about your situation of violence, here are some questions to think about. Who can support you? Who are the people you usually turn to? Who has been helpful? And what is it that made them helpful? Who do you think could be helpful in supporting you with your situation of violence?